Welcome back to our series. I'm Chantel Mallory, and we're excited to be joining you again today to discuss the beautiful world of diversity, equity, inclusion, justice.
And hello again, I'm Marty Carrington. Thanks so much for tuning in again with MC Squared.
Today we want to take a bit deeper of a dive on the topic of DEI and hiring practices. This is a topic Marty and I both care a lot about since we are both human resources professionals, and we think about things in a little bit different way than maybe you're used to. Marty, do you mind explaining?
Sure. So Chantel and I think about improving the hiring process long before people come in for an interview. We know that an organization that wants to diversify their workforce needs to do a lot of internal work before even making a job offer or even listing the position.
And the real work starts with your mission, your vision, and the values of your organization. The organization really needs to ensure that these pieces are in place and speak to identity of the organization and the culture. Once those critical elements are in place, they serve as the guiding force to refer back to during the entire hiring process.
And another key element of creating a more equitable and inclusive hiring process is a thorough examination of your job descriptions and job postings. Chantel and I help organizations complete DEI audits of their job descriptions and postings. We ask employers, is this really a requirement of the job, or is this just how it's always been listed? Job descriptions should include only those key accountabilities. What is critical to the success of the job? Simply placing language in job descriptions because it's always been that way is not a good reason.
Now, the education and experience required for the job should also be examined at this point. How many of us have seen bachelor's degree required, master's degree preferred for a job, and then upon examination, we find that it doesn't even require higher education and could be taught on the job? Another example we see in our audits is that the person should be able to lift 25 pounds or more. And that's included in the job description, but rarely, if ever, does the job require heavy lifting. If the only lifting that position requires is a very occasional box of printer paper or something like that, it may be that the job doesn't require the person to have that ability, and an accommodation can be found. Including this type of language in a job description can discourage an applicant with a disability from applying for a job the person would otherwise be able to perform.
We also strongly believe that pay and salary information should be listed in a job posting. Without that information, job seekers are left with an unfair advantage or disadvantage, perhaps settling for a lower salary than expected or negotiating too low for themselves. People have been historically underpaid, such as Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, women, people with disabilities, other marginalized groups are disproportionately impacted by leaving off salary information. And if there's a pay range based on experience, we need to be specific with what sort of experience warrants the higher end of that pay scale.
A key ingredient to creating a more equitable hiring process is properly training and preparing those who will interview your candidates. This includes creating a bank of fair and unbiased interview questions that ask the candidate specific skills that are needed for the job and allows you to know about their experience and how that can be applied to the role. These questions should be asked of each candidate for the same job, and the interviewer should stay the same for each of those candidates as well. This minimizes bias in the questioning process and allows you to examine each candidate's responses on your own.
During the interview process, you may notice some bias creeping in based on our lived experiences. For example, one candidate may show up for a virtual interview wearing a jacket, and the next candidate does not. We may be inclined to think that the candidate wearing the jacket is more professional or takes the interview more seriously, when in reality, we have no basis for that opinion. That's called professionalism bias. And it can happen when our bias leads us to identify someone as more or less professional based on things such as dress or hairstyle, background on their computer screen, the car they drove to an interview, and any other factor. It's critical we base our hiring decisions based on the candidate's communicated skills and abilities and how well they align with those key responsibilities required for the job.
Now, the final piece of an equitable hiring process goes back to salary. If you're transparent up front with what the job pays, the offer and negotiation process should be a lot clearer for the candidate and for the hiring manager. The manager should be equitably paying employees doing the same job regardless of how that candidate negotiates. Now, historically, people with marginalized identities are paid less than their white male colleagues doing the exact same job. So by sharing that salary information in the job posting and making a fair salary or pay offer, we can ensure our pay practices remain equitable and just.
As we wrap up this third video in our series, we want to leave you with some questions to get you started in your hiring practice audit. When was the last time you audited language in the important documents of your organization for inclusion, equity, access, and belonging? Where would you begin if you started tomorrow? Where could problematic language be hidden within your organization that could potentially cost you in recruiting, interviewing, hiring, and onboarding?
Reflect on those questions and take them to those who are responsible for hiring in the organization. Have the necessary conversations to make meaningful changes that will result in more equity and inclusion in your organization's hiring practices. Use these tools to begin to take action. And we look forward to joining you again for the fourth and final video in this series when we share meaningful employee retention strategies and performance conversations.